Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here yet again for another fantastic, or should I say, mighty episode here of Mount Schmoedown, as we are talking about the mighty Matt Knost, who played 13 of his 16 teams. No, wait, no. Was it 13 or 14? Hold on.
14. So we're only two in the back.
14.
Yeah.
14 of his 16 teams matches with his buddy, Batman and Robin, his buddy, John, top 10.
The Butch to Sundance.
Yeah. They are ride or die. They do everything together. I mean, they have a podcast together, Top 10. A very successful podcast there with Top 10. And as everyone can notice, we have a special guest with us here today.
New York.
How's it going, Aaron?
Good. Thank you for having me on. I believe Ryan said I'm the first other person than you three that's been on the show. So I'm glad to bring disappointment wherever I go. But no, this is a fun one, man, because especially when you guys, because a lot of your competitors you guys have talked about recently have been more recent modern day competitors. And so when you go back and look at someone who kind of stepped away during the transition, it really is looking at a totally different game and player. So this is an interesting one to be a part of.
Yeah. Going back and rewatching his matches, season 2, just watching season 2 teams and now teams, you're like, so weird. Like, I hadn't watched season 1 and 2 in such a long time. I was like, wait, they go back and forth in the first round, and then
they had, and then of course, looking at season 3, you had select a category, and then it's like first person answers 3 questions, and then that was really insane in those seasons. That's why it was funny how when we decided on Knost, it was just. This guy literally played in 3 different eras, just like Makuga and just like fucking Mance. This guy, and the difference between at least Makuga and Knost at the time, Knost, he walked away. He was not planning on coming back. No angles involved. It was just he felt his time was done, and when he left too. I mean, I'm not going to be afraid to admit I really was getting more into his character in the 5th season when after they beat Team Action Spectacular 2. I was really hoping for big things for top 10, and we were going to get into top 10's length of a season. But if we just have to break down, guys, our first impressions of Matt Knost, if we had to really go at him, look at his character. What's something, or at least what do you get off of Matt Knost in general as your impression?
I think he's a pretty solid and great team player. I think he could hang with some of the players today, in my opinion. Some, not all.
And that's a good thought too. I mean, look, let's be honest. The Schmoedown has changed its format for this season. I think Knost could definitely not be like in the top tier, but he definitely could be a dangerous competitor to go up against. But Brandon, how about you? What would be your your first impression, or what your first vibes you get off of Matt Knost?
Super laid back, super chill. He's just there to help out his buddy John. Just always felt like he didn't 100% want to be there, but John asked him to, and he said sure. You could definitely tell that John was the one that was definitely 110% in. Matt was more of I guess I have nothing better to do. So that's kind of why I'm here. Like, it's not a bad thing. It didn't look like he had the same passion as John Roca. Yeah.
Aaron, what about you? Your feelings or whatever impressions that you got off of Matt Knost?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm going to make a comparison here. I'll see what you guys think of this. In a lot of ways, in terms of his gameplay, he reminds me of Andrew Guy. Now, obviously, they're 2 very different people in that Guy is full-on character, all intensity, all the time, whereas Matt Knost, I mean, he literally played almost the whole match with his feet kicked up on a desk one time. Like, that's the amount that he's bringing to this. But in terms of the play style, if you look at those early matches, like season 2, season 3, there are moments where statistically he is the better player of the two, but it's as the Schmoedown went on and Roka got more and more invested, he took over and became that bigger and bigger player, and Knost became a good to okay player. The reason I compare him to Guy is when you look at something like Team Action, early on, Guy was considered the better player of the two.
Yeah.
And as Bateman became more invested and he did more to get better, Guy never really seemed to take that full step Bateman did. And so you start to take a back seat. And so I think it is interesting, and you can compare the two in that Knost is a solid B player for an A player who's like leading the charge and the thing. And it's just, instead of bringing that intensity and character and screaming, he brings just, the odd quip and I could care less attitude.
Oh my God, that's very good comparison. I had a similar comparison to with Knost as well, but I was going to compare him more to Jason Inman of when he and Mance were Team Trek. While Mance was the more passionate person of the group, Inman, he was also very laid back. He was there for the trivia, and at times you can tell from his reaction. Sometimes it looked like he couldn't be bothered to be there. But one thing that was different between Knost and Inman on their journeys is when Inman got into a division he wanted to sink his teeth in, which was Inner Geekdom, that's where he put most of his energy into. And, of course, he succeeded by becoming an Inner Geekdom champion. While Knost, he was mainly there as, Roka's backup, his ride or die. I know when they did Top 10 on Collider, on their shows live, that when they had so many guests on there, the old videos are still there. I still love watching their top 10 shows. And even now, listening to them on podcasts, it's fantastic. The chemistry between Roka and Knost, those are really good friends between the two of them. And the banter that goes between them with movie knowledge. I mean, let's be honest, Knost has movie knowledge. It just comes down to the situation when he's in that hot seat, like so many other players we have watched and have seen come and go in movie trivia. I mean, the best example I can say of someone who has the movie knowledge, but when it comes down to their time in the hot seat, is most likely, I would say, like Christian Harloff or RB3. When you see him on variety shows like Schmoes Knows or SEN, that knowledge is there. But it's just the moment they're asked those questions, the brick wall. They come into that
15 seconds. They're like 15 seconds. It's just. Like, the knowledge is there, just the path to get there sometimes takes a little bit longer. Like, I feel like Robert Butler III there's no doubt he has the knowledge for all of these. Like, there no doubt in my mind, he probably knows almost every single answer. He can't get to it within the allotted time that they are given in the Schmoedown, which doesn't mean he's not a good player. Like, he has the knowledge. Like, it's just the way that the Schmoedown is it's not necessarily who has all the knowledge, who has the best skill set to get to that knowledge in the quickest amount of time. Yeah.
I mean, well, has not to veer too far from Knost, but I can bring it back in a second. Has RB3 ever won a match?
No.
Okay.
He has been, I think he's 0-3 or 0-4. 0-3, yeah.
So the thing is, every single one, though, he's like within like 2 or 3 points. So he's barely there.
Well, I was going to say, because I know from this episode, his match with Knost went to sudden death, and his third match was earlier this year against Goddard, and that was also a very close match. It wasn't
and
like
his
a
match
blowout.
against, and he also played against Stacey Howard. Well.
That was the other one, yeah.
So, but
I know he had a team at some point, but I don't think they did very good either.
The Wingers, they had a very short-lived career. They actually started just like with every other team, the Ultimate Schmoedown when it was the B team. Then it became the Wingers with him and Cobster, and then they played the Real Rejects in a loser breaks up match.
Okay.
One of two that happened in season 4 this season, which really it's honestly, this season 4 was pretty much like the rise and fall of Top 10.
There it is.
I was about to say, he's 0-6 in teams.
Yeah,
I mean, 0-6 across all.
Yeah, it's one of the worst parts because of Matt Knost talking about his team's record, or at least his ability and him being a teammate. Season 4 was the only time you really got to see him and Roca really shine in most of the sense. I mean, come on, let's talk. When they won their match against the Schmoes to win that championship belt in a knockout, that set a huge precedent for them moving forward as a team team top 10. It boost their ego. It gave Knost and Roca. I mean, of course, for Roca, his ego went to the moon, but for Knost, it was really a good, solid match for him as a teams player. Because, come on, we are going to be talking. Look, I know we are going to talk about the Patriots and top 10 rivalry, but just in general with Knost, we have seen matches like you have said, Aaron, in season 2 where he was the stronger player, but in the transition within the season 3, we saw a bit of the cracks, and then in season 4, you really started to see where Roca really was eclipsing him in matches against Real Rejects or against Blofeld's Cat, or even in the top 10's rematch against the Patriots before Collision. No, it was after Collision. Yeah, they played them after the Wolves of Steel, but it was more of Knost. Like, everyone Snyder likes to famously say he doesn't study, he just relies on movie knowledge. I think Knost is that similar situation. He relies on the movie knowledge he has at hand. He doesn't. He's not. I don't think he's a big studier, in my opinion. How about you guys? You think he studies?
No.
I was gonna say he had maybe a slight added benefit that he does a weekly show that would incline you to do some natural studying, because they've said openly on the show they've come up with list ideas and then realized, like, is there a cursing rule in the show? I was gonna say something, but never.
Go ahead. It's fine.
But like there's like, fuck, like, we really don't have enough movies for this. So they start watching movies to come up with a list, or start rewatching movies to figure out a list.
It's not studying for the Schmoedown. It's just studying for his podcast, which benefits him on the Schmoedown.
Yeah. You're
two
not
birds, one stone.
You're not Ben Batemaning where you're watching a movie, pausing every 30 seconds, making a binder full of notes, but maybe you've now seen a movie that you've never seen before, which will then aid you, because realistically, the more you can watch, the more you can get right.
That's really singles and teams. You can't study every single movie. It's just watching, and just hopefully you have a really good retention, so that when you're asked that question, you're like, oh, I watched this like a month ago. Boom. So, because there's so many movies, like, you could probably focus on a couple categories, maybe like a certain director, but you can't do genre, like horror, thriller, or drama. There's so many within that, just that one category. Yeah. Like, you would have to just spend like a whole year, do nothing else, to study every movie that's ever been released in that category.
That's true. And it's kind of funny with Knost in his categories, if we look at it, because out of him and Roca of top 10, we know when it comes down to it, they're combined like strengths. I've seen they are great in biopics. They work well together in sports. Animated, surprisingly, Knost is the more heavy of the two. Mm-hmm. And I know they switch back and forth when it gets to certain like directors and 80s movies. Yeah. And even in their matches, I think they've never gotten Spinner's Choice before. They've been given biopics, they've been given sports, comedy movies, Disney, surprisingly, which normally cripples most other teams. But in their match against the Schmoes that got them, their second match against the Schmoes when they got Disney, it was more of a situation where you thought they would dominate. But yeah, it was just weird. Their matches against the Schmoes were, the first one, knockout. But then the second time, that was top 10's match to lose, because when they went in, the Schmoes were ahead by 3-4 points. And it was just going, no, they were ahead by points. 3? Yeah. Sorry, I was calculating the scores in my notebook.
19 was the score after round 2.
Yeah. And it was going back and forth between them. They got the Schmo. I mean, top 10 got their 10. They got their 2 in biopics, and the Schmoes got theirs in coming of age. They missed their 3-pointers. Amazingly, top 10 misses theirs in Star Wars.
You could just see Roca just like, ah! He's like, I want to answer this.
But I think that was Knost's category, which that he took.
Yeah. But that's why Roca was just like about to explode. He's like, Star Wars, come on!
Oh my god, it was hilarious. And I think the that match against the Schmoes, their second match, I think that was finally the time they implemented the bonus question, or the bonus question was brand new, added into the Schmoedown during season 4. Because when they fought against, because in season 4, it was still the whole situation to where it's three categories, but then they were slowly transitioning to the whiteboards, and we had not seen the implementation of the bonus question. So it was really amazing to see how that happened. I mean, of course, nobody got a perfect round there, so we didn't get to see it happen.
I can't. I was going to say which one against the Patriots, if it was the first one or the second one. Snyder got a perfect round. So he got.
I think it was the second one.
It would have been the second one.
It was the second one.
One of the things I did when I was watching was I kind of made note of how many questions he was getting right, just to see if there was a consistency basis. Their second Schmoes match was the first match top 10 played with the 8-question format. So the first Patriots match had the 3 questions as well.
Yeah. It was the top 10 Patriots second match. Snyder went perfect in every category, but he missed his bonus question. And you know what?
I was watching that, and I'm like, oh, he's so close.
Oh God, yes.
They both Spider-Man 2. No, it's Spider. It's the one about
Nickelback.
Nickelback had a song in
Hero 4.
There's something about those movies that messes up the players. You know what I mean? Either that or don't tell Peter where the smart.
The Titans. Let's Remember the Titans. I think Spider-Man is the poison movie for people to get.
For sure.
And I have to admit, I also took note of some good wits, and Ken Knapsack, who is just amazing beyond this, had some great comebacks on both. Had some great one-liners on both those 3-pointers. When Knost missed Star Wars, he says, "I may not have kissed a woman, but I knew the answer." And then Knost's great response was like, You think that's related? And then of course when Ellis missed that 3-pointer, oh my God, it was so good. I can't believe our guy, but he said the only time in history Nickelback has been this important. It's this situation. But even then, that was still a fun match. Like that's the one thing when Knost plays against people. I mean, sure, other than the Patriots, it's very serious. But in his singles matches against Dewberry, against RB3, against even Snyder and Dagnito, they were still fun matches to where it looked very competitive, despite his misses in some questions. It always still remained very competitive. So while some will think of him not as an A-level top-tier player, I think he is somewhere within a B tier to where you will get a good match against him. But it just depends on what Knost you're going to get, because his first match against Dewberry, man, that was brutal. That was rough.
Yeah, those were like, people complain about the difficulty of questions now. Go back and watch some old matches, especially because now there's a team.
There was some where you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah, there's like there was no consistency is really what the problem is. You would go from one question which one of the things I don't miss in the digital era, you would hear the entire audience groan and moan about a question because it seems so easy. And then the next question would be like, what the fuck? This is a 2-pointer? Really? Oh, all right, sure.
There was so many of that with Roca and Knost. Like their match against Blofeld when they had that 5-pointer in rom-coms. Wait, no, that's Real Rejects I'm thinking of. Yeah, 80s movies. What's the movie that starred that 1987 movie sci-fi film starring Meg Ryan, Dennis Quaid? I forgot the other one. It was Inner Space. And their reaction, that's a 5-pointer? And then their 5-pointer was in movie characters. That was just those situations to where, yeah. I mean, I really don't miss that with the crowd. And even now with the digital ace, people, even in the live chat amongst everyone, the fans, they're going, that's a 5-pointer? That's so easy. How could you miss that?
Yeah, but I don't have to hear the physical noise, so it's all right.
I'm going to say this. Watching these old matches made me really miss studio matches. Hopefully you get them back next year.
True. Studio matches are great.
But we do know next year we are not getting any digital teams matches. And I'm like, thank you, Christian. Like, I'm grateful that we got them, but they're way too long now. Like they're so long. Like they're like, oh man, they get ridiculously long because they have to move people out of the mainstream, put them in that like separate stream, and then once they're in there, okay, we're good. And then they bring them back. It's just,
and the managers were the only one that had to remain behind while they said the questions. And while I understand it's to prevent, because I know, of course, with digital streams, someone's put in the background, the host of the stream can still hear them talking. So it would be very difficult for him, for Christian or Mark in a situation to navigate that. But even then, we have seen with the managers in the background, whenever there's questions where it looked like it was challengeable or not the exact right answer, it was a situation where a manager just couldn't be able to comment on that because they're not as invested into the trivia as the team that they're representing, which is why I see that as a positive to where Christian is only going back to, whenever he can, do studio-only teams matches. At least this way, it's a better controlled environment. He can be able to practice, especially in studio environments, he can practice a safe distance when they are allowed back in. And I do agree one thing with the getting rid of the digital teams tournament. Sometimes the link is a little frustrating, especially with team players especially with Wi-Fi issues, because we've seen with Shazam, Brendan Meyer, he had, of course, the constant issues with his Wi-Fi. And I know it didn't happen a lot, but I know that one thing's for sure, if we ever do I don't know if Spectacular is going to be all digital matches. But if we did have digital matches, last thing I want is have an intense battle between Shazam and whoever the winner is of the teams tournament, and then Brendan just drops out to where Bibbs is all alone. That throws off the flow of the whole match.
Yeah, it's definitely like I'm grateful for these digital matches, but I will always take like live venue or studio match all day.
Okay.
Yeah. The problem with the teams matches is they, in their attempt to keep it as genuine as you possibly can to the way that they would normally do it in person, you are sacrificing quality in terms of how it's run and how it looks. Because you're absolutely right. Like, especially at least during the edited ones, like with the tournament stuff, they can edit most of that out if they can get it out of there. But like with the live matches, there's so much dead air, like especially in the title matches when we've had the speed round, when you have to flip-flop 4 different people in and out of the call, and it's just so much dead air, just like, all right, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Which is why Wi-Fi has become an Achilles heel of the Schmoedown.
You can see in Christian's face why it's not coming back next year. So
if you watched him this week when he said it, he was like he just absolutely despises the online teams. But
I'm trying to remember when did he say it? I remember watching it. I don't remember where he said it.
Tuesday
when he made the announcement?
Yeah,
it was during this week. It was this week at the end. I believe it was Monday's episode when he made that announcement. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Monday or Tuesdays, honestly. It was very recent.
So yeah, I was like, thank you, Christian.
Yeah.
But trying to get more back talking about the man of the hour, Matt Knost. Matt Knost. Who would now? This is probably an easy discussion. So they faced the Patriots 3 times, Team Action twice, Schmoes twice. Would you say they have a rival in the Patriots or no? Because the Patriots have dominated them all 3 times. Because they played Team Action twice and they split.
Yeah.
And they beat Schmoes twice, but it was close. Like people will always say they had a thing against the Patriots, but I would push back against that because the Patriots dominated them in all 3 times that they played top 10.
I would also agree on that situation too. I mean, look, despite the Patriots winning, but wherever people feel how a rivalry should be, rivalries are meant to bring the best out of you, or it's meant to be like one of your most heated competitions, the ones that irks you the most. And I guess if I have to really rank them or at least categorize them, I would say the Patriots. I really would say they are the number 1 rivalry of the top 10 because
for me though, it's equal. Like they both win just as much as they lose, but that's not how Patriots and top 10 is.
Yeah, I mean, on teams, the teams format, yes, they own top 10. But when you look at singles matches, we have seen Roca, JTE, and Snyder go back and forth. We've seen, of course, Knost. He's never gotten the opportunity to go that back and forth. But even then, when you look at the storyline aspects that Christian loves to build into the Schmoedown, top 10 and Patriots would sit on the top, would be number one, because their matches, because the first time top 10 Patriots fought, it was the formation of the Lion's Den, the formation of the Four Horsemen, to what's led to an inner battle war. The second time they fought them, it was like the beginning of the end, honestly, because later afterwards, Robert Barnett left them, and then Bibiani left them. And then when they played them again, they were fresh off of their win against Team Action at Spectacular, and they had just made a new top 10 record against Top That. So it was pretty much like top 10 were at the height. They were not only back, but they had resharpened and refocused themselves. But then, of course, we get into top 10 Patriots 3. What happens? Betting round. We get the dreaded question that will now follow Roca until his retirement, like Bespin, but it's a damn second close, and that is Jane Fonda.
Yeah, you did right, Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
I see you have something on your mind, Ben. Go ahead.
For me, I would say Patriots on top 10 quite well. But for me, I would say the rivals of the top 10 is Team Action. You know, like Brandon said, they're 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And also has one of the best moments in Schmoedown history.
The tackle.
Yeah.
The tackle.
Yeah. And the way that happened, it's still one of the most rewatchable moments. He just goes out to reach for Knost's hand after that TKO when they couldn't answer who's going to be the director of The Lion King. And it just went down to, I mean, the remake, the 2019 Lion King, not the 94 one.
Yeah.
But the breakdown there, and it was even hilarious. It was even let's talk about top 10 in the Team Action rivalry, the short rivalry that was amongst them. They faced off each other in the Ultimate Schmoedown, the teams tournament. It was the top 10 had just beaten Blofeld's Cat. Team Action had beaten DC Movie News, and it was those two coming head to head, blow to blow. The old guard versus the new guard. There was a lot of trash talk, a lot of attitude thrown both ways. And
you could tell that Guy was in Roca's head in that first round. Roca had to leave a comment after every single question towards Guy.
I was gonna say, I forget who made the comment, but someone in round 3 made a comment where it was when they were all talking, but I heard someone say he's paying rent in your head, and it's that is exactly what's happening. He is
rent free. He was living rent free in Roca's head. Guy was.
I think Christian must have said that on the desk, or maybe it was Knapsack. Hold on, but man, it was just
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was. I personally think that was one of Guy's just overall. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Matt Eisenman.
Yeah, right. It might have been him that said it then, because he was very enthusiastically going after both teams.
Yeah, and I can't think of this happening other than this time. They literally 2 straight matches they play against each other. Somehow, top 10, they lose the match, yet somehow they qualify for Spectacular.
Well, I don't think they qualified. I think it was after Team Action's lost to Above the Line. They were annoying them into a match where Bateman pretty much it was a stipulation match that happened. If Team Action won, they get an opportunity for a number 1 contendership shot at the championships. If top 10 lost, they would have to break up. It was one of those matches. Yeah, it was one of those. Other than the Commissioner Bowl, it was one of those matches where there were stakes involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Manageable.
I was going to say, honestly, that was one of the more confusing parts of all of these matches. It'd probably make more sense if you go back and watch every match that aired around that time in order. But one of the notes I took was the promo they cut, because usually, and all credit goes to the people editing. I know Nerd Chronic does a lot of it now, but the promos they do a great job in cutting them. That one was very confusing in terms of if you're trying to explain to someone how this came to be, they were clearly putting stuff that was said in ways that were out of order.
Yeah.
So it kind of made it was really confusing to me trying to remember, how did this sort of happen? But it happened. To comment on that match, can I just say, and I don't think it's a question that would ever get asked in the modern Schmoedown, that question Guy had to answer was kind of BS. Who's directing a movie that's coming out 2 years from now? That's kind of BS.
That is kind of one I do admit that was a BS question. I'm surprised they did not challenge it. Surprisingly, I mean,
it's like the guy just wanted to tackle him. He was just let's just get there.
No, and so what's weird about that whole thing? They all discussed it beforehand. That I think, if Team Action lost, then he's going to tackle Roka. But apparently, Roka was caught off guard by the tackle because apparently he forgot that they were going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, he did mention that, I think, on a top 10 episode before, to where he was just so elated with the win that he didn't prepare himself to tackle him. And even Matt knows. I mean, the I'm still hilarious to where he's just looking back like, what the hell just happened?
Everyone in the room was ready for it.
We kind of had, I think there was a question in the Merle, Meyer, and Bibbs match in New York this year where they asked like a behind the scenes question.
Yeah.
And so that was somewhat recent, and I agree. That's not
that
has nothing to do. Yeah, that
actually,
has
they
nothing.
used to have categories of in season 2 of the Ultimate Schmoedown. Actually, the first 2 seasons, they did used to have a category of movie news or box office news or casting rumor, casting news. Even some of that bled into the 3rd season. So it's kind of one of those questions to where they should have really double checked themselves, especially if they're becoming more of a trivia oriented. I mean, I understand entertainment news when you hear of confirmed stuff like, like right now, the most recent, it talks that David Fincher is going to be doing a Netflix movie, like a Netflix original series. Of course, it's news to us, but at the same time, not everyone's involved in that. So if you see that come up as trivia question,
that's not trivia knowledge, though.
No,
that's just staying up with
something that didn't happen. Yeah, it's just something that might happen. It's not something that already happened.
So
you shouldn't have to read a news article to be able to get a trivia question right.
So.
That's true.
Like those are the only 2 that I can think of where it was a little bit like that's not really a trivia question. That's just a movie news question, and that's not what this isn't the movie news Schmoedown. This is the movie trivia Schmoedown. So,
which I was gonna say, not to again divulge too much from the topic, but I think that just goes into, especially like with Knost particularly going back and watching old matches, it is interesting to really get to see the evolution of where it went from to where it came, because like season 1 and 2 especially, it was a mini game on a podcast. I mean, I remember in season
segment on a podcast. Yeah,
I remember in season 1, one of the categories was literally Point Break. It was a whole category centered around one movie. That would never, and it was just because they all liked it. That would never fly nowadays. Because I mean, first off, that'd be just incredibly difficult. You don't know what they'd ask. But
I mean, they don't have ones on movies, but they have ones like on an actor or director. But again, that's different because
I would call that fair.
Because that's a
whole
wide.
career.
Yeah, it's a wide category. Now, Matt Knost has had some pretty awesome moments throughout his career. Wins a title against Schmoes. What would you rank his top moment of all time as? Me personally, it's the 5 Horsemen reveal at that live event. Personally, that's got to be, especially for Matt Knost, because it's actually kind of funny because I'm pretty sure he didn't compete in a match after that. Like he never was in a match with the 5 Horsemen.
No, not with them. No.
No, because later on after that we got
Cinemaniac
Anarchy. Yeah. No, we've not really seen anything like that.
But
That
like,
is
it's literally hands down for me one of the, like, literally it is a top 5 Schmoedown ever moment. Like, just the way that it worked with the music and the reveal that Dan Murrell was back, like, that was a pretty epic moment. And for me, Matt Knost is there. He's involved with the 5 Horsemen at that reveal. So for me, that counts as a Matt Knost amazing moment.
Yeah, and he has shown support. Like, he during even when the Horsemen had their matches, he was there in support, like in the background.
Yeah.
But it was funny. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No.
No, just doing the 5 reveal.
Yeah. It is weird just because you bring up the 5 Horsemen. It is weird to think about how, like, that is for almost everyone, I'd say probably one of the biggest, kind of more leaning towards the theatric side, influential moments of the Schmoedown, and how little that group actually did anything together, because Knost never played again, Inman never played, and obviously Dan and Roca were kept together, but then Riley got put with Ben, and so that automatically changes the dynamic of everything.
Yeah, it was one of the biggest, like, just ultra highs that nothing ever. Because like you said, like, they never really got the 5 Horsemen, or that version of the 5 Horsemen never became a thing, because we got Roca, Dan, Bateman, Riley, and Dagnito. They then became the 5 Horsemen, which in turn became the Finstock Exchange.
Right. Yeah. Which in turn became Schmoedown Family Drama.
Yeah. And actually the 5 Horsemen, it is kind of one of the more disappointing factions of that year. I mean, at least for season 5 as we count. Because Christian really he has said constantly he had plans for that faction. It was meant to be the next super mega group. I mean, because at the time, the Lions Den was still a thing, and at the time, and of course, we had the 5 Club just really there on the horizon.
I feel like he was setting a course for the 5 Club and the 5 Horsemen to
become the new 4 Horsemen and Lions Club, basically.
Yeah. It just didn't work out that way for him.
I think, it was around that year, Christian really did see a big thing on factions, which is why he had during that season 5. I mean, you had Lions Den, you had 5 Club starting, you had Jay Washington with the Viper Squad. I mean, even if you were not part of a faction, before Mike left, there was the League until he took a big Thor hammer and broke that shit.
If you really think about it, the Horseman reveal really started a snowball on factions. Because we had the 5 Horsemen, the 5 Club, and then, like you said, the Viper Squad, and then into season 6, then we got the Dungeon, and then we had Corruption there in season 5, and that kind of started that snowball effect here where we are here today, where season 7 started the whole faction. Like, that's literally what the League is now. Is it's faction versus faction versus faction.
Yeah. Everything was building.
I think it's only going to get more intense from here on out with these factions.
I mean, of course. I mean, who else is going to see exactly how? Yeah, Brian, that's correct. Season 6 also had the formation of the family too, which was so that the importance of factions were there, and especially having a group, because if we look at the idea of a faction, or at least being in a team in general, teams and factions gave you more opportunities to play trivia matches, whether if it was singles or not. I mean, no 6 singles matches only, but then he got to play so many teams matches with Roca in top 10, and then of course an Anarchy came. The fact that he was a good player showed. I mean, his chemistry with Bibiani. That's kind of like my favorite example of 2 very combative personalities becoming a team. And just the fact that Bibbs and Knost made this a real, I mean, sure, we have the odd couple, but Knost and Bibbs was a real odd couple. 2 very Very different personalities we saw in their first match. Cinemaniacs going up against Franchise Force. You have Bibbs, who just won the singles championship. Emma was drafted to be their manager, and you see the promo, how Matt and Bibbs keep arguing back and forth. And even with the entrances, how Bibbs was great on entrances. And then, of course, you have the gif of just Matt just doing a soft little...
just a little dance, yeah.
a little jig while he's coming out there. It's hilarious.
I was going to say, Brian, I saw the comment pop up. I'm pretty sure the comment Brian put happened in the one against Who's the Boss, which would have been Matt's finals match, which was the good one, where I think it was Ben made some quip, and he just kind of looks at him and just goes, good one, man.
Yeah, Leo, I definitely caught that reference that Bibbs and Emma were dressed as the Animaniacs. It was so fucking good. And and honestly, I liked it was even better. It played into some nice meta humor, but also some good character play to where it sticks to No's character. He just doesn't gel with others. I mean, he does his own thing.
No, he gels with one other person, and that's John Roca.
Yeah, John Roca. And hold on, let's talk about top 10, like the dynamic between them. I know we've gone back and forth with them, but Roca and Knost. If it wasn't for Roca and Dan becoming the founding fathers, would we have seen top 10 come back? Like, let's say Roca and Dan decided to split their ways after the loss to Corruption, would we have seen Knost and Roca play in season 6?
I don't know. Maybe.
I
think the thing is with Knost, I'm pretty sure if Roca really asked him to, I think Knost would come back.
Yeah.
And now that you brought that up, that got me thinking. So, spoilers here for anyone that has not watched yesterday's match. I'll give you guys about 5-10 seconds here.
Yeah.
For the final exam in the Founding Fathers.
Once my hands go down, we're going to be talking about spoilers. And now.
So, Founding Fathers lost. This could be an opportunity to break up the Founding Fathers. Knost never retired. He's not involved.
Nope.
Knost could then be put into the draft. Maybe he gets drafted the same faction as Roca, and we get a reunion of top 10. I'm not saying it's out of the question. I just don't. It's an interesting thought to think about. Just because I know Knost will only come back to play with Roca. And Roca has said that he only wants to play with Dan, but I feel like he would play with Knost. And I feel like that's the only way to get Roca in teams is if he doesn't play with Dan, he plays with Knost.
Well, here's something to back up that theory. Isn't that what happened with the real Rejects last year? They were broken up and they got reunited. Greg and John.
Leo, hasn't Ken also retired like 3 times as well?
And Leo, also to combat, if we were going to bring up Andrew Guy, after the loss the family had against Shazam, did say he retired as well. And even McWeenie, the start of the season, said he retired.
No one.
You bring up a great point, Leo. You do. But with the Schmoedown, retirement is kind of like deaths in comic book movies. Are they really gone?
No.
Are they?
Yeah. And the thing is, I think the bane with the Andrew Guy retirement was this thing called pre-recording, because even he's talked about, he was pretty solidly convinced that he didn't want to come back and then turned it around. It's just what was a couple months in real life was about 3 days worth in terms of airing. So it looks a little off in that sense. Yeah, I mean, tons of people have retired and come back. Retirement is more I don't want to play for a little bit.
It's more of taking a break. Like, you need to find a better, like, it is retired, but it's not. It's like, I don't feel like doing this right now. And then, like, they go away and, like, oh, I kind of miss it. And then they come back.
Harloff is retired. That's a
retired. Clark and Rachel Cushing, they're also retired.
Yeah, Clark hasn't come back either. I mean, there are people who have retired and not come back. It's just a matter of
Ellis is also retired. Sorry, he's also retired. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Not that true.
Okay, the Smash-a-thon
That doesn't actually count.
Smash-a-thon was
charity.
like Smash-a-thon was like the doctor going outside the universe to find a plan outside of the bubble of the universe. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
we saw that. No,
Do you know the reception Ellis would have got if he turned around and said, "I know it's for charity, but I'm sorry, I'm retired. I can't play."
no, the thing is, I'm pretty sure that. No, she's not. She's just not in the.
Not involved, I guess.
Yeah. She's just not involved. She's not. Just. I don't know why people think, they're not involved, so they're retired. Those two don't go together. Some competitors have retired. Like for Clark Wolf and Rachel Cushing, it's just the stress of just being in the matches, being at live events. It's not worth it to them. They're like, they still love the Schmoedown, especially Rachel. She's a co-host on Backstage, so she obviously she loves the Schmoedown. It's just.
And many people have said about Rachel, when she's hosting Backstage, that she has said she even likes Snyder has said this on not on Backstage, but Snyder has said this among some other podcasts. Even other people, including Bibbs and Whitney, has said even though she's not playing, Rachel is still communicating. She still talks to people in the Schmoedown, even helping them occasionally, just like what Brianna Chandler did during her time.
Coach of the Usual Suspects, basically.
Here's a wild prediction. I think at some point Rachel comes back. I don't know when.
No.
It won't be next year, but I think I see her coming back.
The only way it does is if Clark comes back, and I don't see Clark coming back.
Yeah. I think Clark, she is definitely.
Bateman tries it every week, by the way. Bateman tries to get her to come back every week. It's not going to work. Just like every time Sam's on, someone tries to get Sam to come back. It's just
he's just new things, guys. I'm done.
Yeah.
But even Sam, I think I remember on a Chill to Action where Sam said he's now looking at the questions that people are getting the Schmoedown, and he was like, "Why didn't I get these before?" Like it's those questions that really irks him, like really teases him to come back.
He's going to come back. He's another one that I believe at some point he'll be back.
I'm pretty sure he's going to get another go as manager. Because the season has not been very fortunate for him, and I think now with next season, now that he's more adjusted,
we have to remember season 7 is not the way it would. I think Sam and Gucci are one of those managers that work better in person than online.
I agree.
Season 7 is going to get looked back on as like almost like a demo season. Because essentially everything that got set up this season, with the one or two exceptions, is about to get demolished. Because most players that will be kept will have had a previous long-standing success track record, and the few that won't, like Adam is now probably going to be someone that is retained, whether it is by Shannon or by some magic another team. And that will be solely because of everything he did this season. But for the most part, I think a lot of this season is unfortunately going to kind of be forgotten because it's no longer, because they've made the decision to do another complete redraft. It's no longer going to be, this is the foundation. Because it almost is.
It's not a redraft. It's more of there are 27 players that will basically be up for picks first. And then they can sign with those teams. Then everyone is, like you said, redrafted. So it is a redraft. Right.
It is a redraft, but not a total one.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, no one's gonna look like, I feel like no one's gonna look back and remember any of these specific teams outside of the one that wins, because a lot of these teams are made up of players who will either end up somewhere else and could potentially make more of an impact there, or people who didn't get to play. That's what I'm saying. Like, this won't get looked on and remembered as like the season that really, really kicked the teams into gear.
Yeah, because if we do look at this, despite whatever is going to happen with the draft, this is completely different from last year's, because last year's Christian had some parameters to where if you were a top 5 player or a team, you were protected.
Yeah.
In this season, even if you have a belt, you're not protected. You're guaranteed that someone will draft you, And even and he has said the winning manager of the winning faction will choose which three.
They're three, and those players have to go with them. It's
right.
Everyone else, it's more of a they don't
option.
necessarily. Yeah, they don't have to sign with the person that asked them.
Yeah,
right.
So it's either going to be most likely it's going to be Shannon, but Winston still has a shot, a long shot, but he still has a shot at winning those faction standings.
Honestly, yeah, I think this upcoming teams match. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, guys, we talked about spoilers earlier on. I'm not sure if you had muted yourselves, but I'm pretty sure you are aware at this point. We stopped talking about final exam versus Founding Fathers, but even then, it depends on what's going to happen with the teams finals. And Spectacular, it's going to determine.
So the thing is, though, even if Final Exam loses next week to the Odd Couple, they still have Swag still has 2 matches at Spectacular.
Yeah,
it is 5 points for just like a normal win, 6 points for a TKO.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Corruption would have to lose their matches at Spectacular. Swag would then have to win by TKO on both of them. So it's not. They're not mathematically eliminated from winning if they don't beat the Odd Couple. It's just really, really difficult.
No.
Now, if they win against the Odd Couple, it definitely makes it easier because then they'll have 3 matches there.
Yeah. And at that point, it's just who wins more of theirs.
That's why I think Manager of the Year will not be decided until after Spectacular. Because I feel like Shannon and Winston are neck and neck. It really depends on who you ask. If we ask Brian here, I know exactly who he'll pick. He will say Shannon, but I know a lot of people will say Winston. I'm with Shannon just based on the fact that what she did. She took her faction from last place to first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a long road.
But the thing is, though, most of her points have come from, 3 competitors?
At this point, yes.
Because
that's how she ended up in last place. All of her early competitors tanked.
Yeah, Mike, Chance, and Collins have literally gotten all the points for the factions. While with Winston, it's been a little bit more spread out.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of 3, I think it's like 4 or 5, which is still, yeah, that's why I'm really excited to see how that all plays out there. We kind of got a little bit off topic here talking about more current stuff.
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, it was just kind of like I kind of started that domino by talking about if Knost was going to be in season 6 because let's really, really rewind back. I mean, Knost as a team player, if we look at what characteristics or what we wanted to see define someone as a team player, of course, obviously they need to have the knowledge. They need to be trustworthy to really have your back in a match, and at the same time, vice versa, have them trust you in order to carry them through. And also, no matter what happens, they're going to stay with you through thick and thin. And Matt Knost has shown that with Roka. Despite their wins or their losses, especially their losses, Knost is there to pick up Roka, reminding him he shares the weight. So where Roka, in most of his losses, he's always putting that blame on himself. But Knost counteracts that by telling him, no, this wasn't on you. I also took some of the hits as well. The blame's also on me, especially in their promo against Real Rejects. When they lost the top 10, Knost was there to make sure that Roka was not dragging himself down. And even the same, when they lost the team belts, Knost was making sure that Roka is not kicking himself in the back. Sure, they will later on when the interview and everything's done. But Knost is that kind of guy to say, no matter what happens, I got you. Like pretty much, he is the Bucky to Roka, Steve Rogers. He's with him to the end of the line.
I'm with you to the end of the line.
Not an old man joke at Roka.
So, any parting thoughts today for you here, Aaron, on Matt?
Yeah, I think it's, when you look at his overall career, it's one of those where he's a player that had some bright moments, but I think he's someone that would be thought of and remembered more for the entertainment factor than necessarily the gameplay. I do think it's interesting when you look at them as a team. If things had shaken out a little different in the Schmoedown, where would they have gone? Because their overall record was 9-5 when they officially stop being a team. But if you take out those 3 Patriots matches, which they got beat 3 times by them, their record becomes 9-2, which is a much more respective record. So it's an interesting thing to look at, as if, let's say, the Patriots never existed, how much more success could they have found? Because clearly that was just the bane of their it was just the bane. And it's funny enough, JTE was on another one of those teams that beat them in Box Office Breakdown. That's a 4th loss for them.
Because Dagnino did an amazing pull on that final question.
Yeah, he's a solid player. Personally, because you were talking about would he come back, I don't think he'll ever come back. Simply because I don't think, just based off of who he seems to be as a person, and I just saw Leo's comment, he is right. Statistically, which is funny, Knost's final singles match is far and away statistically his best match. So he was getting better by the time he retired. I don't know if he'd 100% put in all the work that everyone is putting in now to be at the level they're at. Like when you hear what Adam Collins did prior to playing in the Schmoedown, I think Knost would just scoff at it and go, really? They're doing that now to play in this? I don't think he'd put in half the work that people are, and that's not a bad thing, because I don't think everyone should. I mean, Ryan and I do stuff in fan leagues together. I'm very open about the fact that I've played fan leagues matches. I don't prep for shit half the time. It's just who I am.
I'm the same way. I'm like, I should prep for this, but I'm like, I don't want to. I'll get lucky and I'll get things that I.
Yeah, I'll be like the first couple of weeks. I'm note taking or I'm rewatching movies, but then the closer and closer it gets to a match, I'm like, oh my god, I should at least watch this before we start. I'm like, no, this is not going to happen. And then guess what happens? But statistics wise, I mean, really, let's take a look at his statistics before we finish up. I mean, what his strongest category, I would say, is sports and animated. And he, regarding that, from the matches I ever watched, he is somewhere within like the 80%, like 70% when it comes to hitting those categories. Hold on.
Yeah, it was really hard to figure out his stats just based on how they were doing the questions in season 2 and season 3, where round 1 wasn't all of them, and then in season 2, round 2 was one of them answered the round 2 question. So it was really difficult to really. It's not like what we've been doing the last couple matches where we had, like Aaron said at the top of the show, we picked a lot of competitors from the last 2 seasons. So it's the current version of the Schmoedown. So it was really this is difficult to compile the stats because, like you said, he was in the Schmoedown in 3 separate eras. It was the segment on a podcast era, the season 3 halfway through season 4, just somewhat like this season, and then we got to the whiteboards with the JTEs and then challenges.
And it's basically stayed consistent ever since.
And also, let's not forget the round 1 structures, how it was in the season 2 and 3, where it was
back and forth.
Back and forth. And it was even like that all the way to when they played against the Patriots at the first Spectacular. It was not until season 4 they finally did the 8-question format. So Knost Knost himself literally was working with 2. Actually, no, in season 2, it was pretty much they're giving 6 categories, and they went back and forth. Like Roka would answer one, then Knost answered one, then Roka, Knost, Knost. So Knost really had to adjust to 3 separate structures in round 1 before he finally got to get to the 8-point structure that we all know now. So if it came down to it, I say Knost, looking at his points, he was very adaptable because he was the heavy in their matches against Screen Junkies, Team Champs, Box Office Breakdown, and then the Rotten Tomatoes and the Schmoes. So
hold on. Screen Junkies. That was Walker and Olaf.
That was Hal Rucknick and Nick Mundy.
One of the things that I noted from that match is that is the only match that Knost played, in which he actually went 100% on both accuracy and points possible earned. He answered all 3 of his questions in the first round. He was the only person to do that. And then all the questions that Screen Junkies missed, Knost answered them all with basically no consultation with Rocha. He just went in and knew it right away. And it's the only, which funny enough, his first match ever. It's the only time he did that. And obviously, it's a really weird, twisted, looked at number when you compare how that game looked to how it looks now. Yeah. But it is just an interesting thing of note that he did get every question he was asked right.
That's true. And let's be honest, when even in their match against Box Office Breakdown, which was very competitive, you see in their point systems, he also got Spielberg in his round 2 a clean sweep. Got all of his questions in Spielberg. He only missed 1 question in the round 1. He clean sweep in the top. And then, of course, round 3, all know during that time was the betting system where they had to bet points. If they had bet all their points, if top 10 had bet all their points, it would have been them against the Schmoes in the first championship match. Yep. But even then, it still doesn't matter. I mean, look, when we look at things with Knost, statistics-wise, he is 100%, I would say, a very solid teams player. Someone I would definitely not say no to if we ever did another Anarchy draft system. If you see Matt Knost paired with somebody, you know this is going to be a dangerous team. Yeah.
Because even like him and Bibbs went 1-1, and that was all. Those were obviously his last 2 teams matches.
Yeah.
But in both of those matches, they both scored over 20 points, I believe, in both those matches. So it's not like they lost in some sort of like, schmucky way. The other thing I noted, I don't know when you guys want to wrap up, but the other thing I noted, which is interesting, is throughout his entire career, Knost only had, in terms of the modern game, he only ever had 1 perfect round in which he went 9 for 9 versus top that. Even in singles, he was consistently always somewhere between 4 and 6 questions. He never got another perfect round. But rounds 2 and especially round 3 was where he would always come in clutch. He very rarely missed questions in round 3, which is something I find interesting because nowadays it seems like the focus of the game is, it's a contrast thing to where it's at now, right? Nowadays, people are so focused on get the perfect round, get all your points at the start of the game so you don't have to answer questions at the end. Whereas he would always, go mediocre at the start of the game, but would start to pick up when it would get more specialized in terms of the categories, and that's where he was getting most of his points. It's just interesting to look at when you see where the game's gone versus how he approached it, and it kind of does make sense why he stepped away when he did.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't think of no better way to close that. Yeah, it's not about how you play the game, but how you approach it. Any final thoughts, Ben, Brandon, before we wrap it up?
You guys basically said everything he had to say. I mean, he was great, and I'm so sorry he got. Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I'm gonna stick with the idea, even though, like Aaron said, it's very unlikely that he comes back and is teamed up with John.
Yeah.
Just because if John doesn't play with Dan, I don't see Rocha being in teams unless Knost comes back. I don't see anyone being able. It's not that I don't think anyone would be good with John. I don't think anyone could handle being on a team with John. John is tough to deal with. I just, other than Knost and Dan, who would want to play with Rocha?
That is putting it lightly, everybody. I mean, it might sound harsh, but it's true. I mean, Rocha, from his podcast, from his YouTube shows, he is a very strong person.
He's a passionate he's very passionate, which is not a bad thing. It's just some people can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Now, I did bring this up earlier about Dan and Rocha splitting up. Then Dan would obviously be teamed up with someone else. Brian asked then, who would Dan be paired with? I saw this on the Facebook group. Team up with Bateman.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not even fair. That's not even fair.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
If Dan and Bateman are paired up, and that really depends, that's a big if, because let's say Dan decides let's see, Finstock decides to pick up Dan, and then Dan says, and then for some reason Roka's not picked up for the 3. If Finstock decides to reach out to Ben and say, "Look, I know you don't like working with me, but you'll get to be teamed up with Dan Murrell," is that strong enough for Bateman to join, or if Bateman picked up by another manager, he tried to see let's initiate a trade to get Dan? I mean,
the only issue now that I think about it with it, Bateman wants to be the number 1 player on a faction. And as long as he's on a faction with Dan, that's not going to happen. Even though last season Bateman was actually drafted ahead of Dan.
Yeah, that's the downsides of Bateman. I mean, unfortunately, that was one of the downsides of the Finstock exchange. Just so many egos involved.
So much ego.
Mainly the ego was Roka and Bateman, honestly. I mean, look, Riley and Dan definitely had their egos, but they were assured in their they were assured in who they were as players. They didn't have to worry about what happened. But yeah, I do admit it is a rough one. To me, if Dan was paired with somebody, I guess if I had to find someone who can be able to
maybe Barbarian, maybe.
To me, I would need to find someone who has who can cover Dan on certain areas, like maybe romance movies, coming of age, some comedies, and some new releases. Because I think to me, it would be a crossover.
Paul Oyama.
I like that.
Yeah, Paul is a good.
As soon as you said coming of age, I thought of Paul just like that.
Yeah.
Lon Harris.
Lon, look, I mean, he and Dan have some previous work experience working together at Screen Junkie, so there was camaraderie between the two of them.
It depends on what Winston does with swag.
Right. Final exam are essentially at the moment in a number 1 contendership position. So it all depends on where that team goes. That's how you have to look at it. So it's all about where they go from here.
That's true.
The thing is, I think Paul is so good. Anyone that he is teamed up with will do very well. Like, look what he did with Zipper.
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't look bad at all.
So I think Paul he'll be good with anyone because Paul's so good, he makes that other person just as good. So I don't think Winston necessarily needs to keep Lon. Definitely needs to keep Paul.
Can you see Luca on the team with KO?
No, because it's
really.
I think Mike is only going to be with Chance because Chance only wants to be with Mike.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So.
That's one of these situations with Dan and Roka where you guys start. If the opportunity is, you have to really think outside the box. Because I think for me, maybe and given her performance in the singles tournament, I think Liz Shannon Miller could be a good partner for Dan.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I could definitely see that as well. But we should probably start wrapping up here a little bit because we could be talking about this all day because there are so many potential scenarios that we could see here with these factions here in the next about 2 months or so. With the basically one spectacular is over, depending on who wins the faction standings, and then just each faction's 3 competitors that they're going to keep. It's going to be interesting to watch. Aaron, where can everyone find you online?
The best place would be TMG Entertainment or TMG Trivia. Over there, I take part mostly on the backside of the desk in terms of hosting a lot of the trivia stuff over there. I've played a little bit. It's gone about as well as you'd imagine. But also, we have our little variety talk show of our own After Dark every Saturdays over there. I am a panelist / fill-in host on that, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, check us out there. It's, there's a lot of trivia leagues out there for you to look at, and we're another one. So check us out. Yeah,
there are definitely a lot of fan leagues. I mean, there's really no other way to put it.
Fan leagues.
They're movie trivia leagues that really started once the Schmoedown started. So a lot of competitors to choose from. You can find all of us here at our Twitters here at the top. There is the show Twitter there at the bottom. Everyone, we appreciate you all coming in and chatting with us about Mighty Matt Knost. Just keep an eye out on the socials to see who we're talking about next week. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you guys next week.